There's this thing about One Piece where we hear about the new generation and the old generation. Luffy is the modern day Roger, Eustace Kid is the modern day Shiki, Trafalgar Law is supposedly the new Whitebeard because of how Whitebeard and Roger actually did end up having a friendship. Even Kobe is dubbed as the modern day Garp, or Smoker is the modern day Garp, whichever side you want to take, by the fanbase. There's always been these types of parallels in the story, and for Luffy, it's not just the modern day Roger comparison, it's him being also the modern day Joy Boy. Zunisha himself said to Momonosuke, "Joy Boy has returned," when Luffy went Gear 5 for the first time against Kaido. And now we have Blackbeard being called the modern day Rocks. Now, of course, this one hits a bit different than the others because Blackbeard is also Rox's son. But just because Blackbeard takes a bit of inspiration from his dad doesn't mean that he will be the modern day version of Rox. In fact, just like how the story likes to have history repeat itself and have modern day counterparts of the characters from the past, a similar pattern I've noticed from the One Piece story is that there are major examples of sons not being like their fathers, and in fact, in some cases, rejecting their fathers completely. The most famous example is of course Portugas D. Ace, son of the Pirate King Goldie Roger himself. Ace hated Roger and was looked at differently, like a monster to the common people because of who his dad was. Ace refused to use his conqueror's haki because of his dad. He's limiting his own potential for greatness because of his hatred for his dad. Sanji is another major example. Now, of course, Sanji was in the right with his one because Judge was so evil to Sanji as a kid that you wouldn't blame Sanji for beating the shit out of his dad. But again, this is another example of a major character where they are nothing like their dad. Judge was a scientist working with Vegapunk. Sanji is a chef on a pirate ship. Nowhere near the same career, let alone personality and characteristics. Sanji cares for people whilst Judge uses his own kids as experiments, seeing them nothing more as his tools for power. The final example I want to use is the main character of the story, Mr. Monkey D. Luffy. His granddad is a hero of the Marines, whilst his dad is the head of the Revolutionary Army, trying to take down the Marines and the world government. Whilst Luffy himself is on the path to becoming the Pirate King, Luffy is already a Yonko of the Seas, being one of the most notorious pirates in the world right now, with one of the highest bounties placed on his head. Luffy's family is proof that sons are not their fathers, and it's been a constant theme now within the story of One Piece, and its major characters as well, who are actively being the complete opposite of what their dad once was. This is one of the reasons why I think Blackbeard won't be the next Rox. Blackbeard is not his dad, nowhere near the same. First of all, the bravery and badassery of Rox compared to Blackbeard is comical. It's hard to actually believe that Blackbeard is Rox's son. Blackbeard back in chapter 595 was holding Jewelry Bonnet captive, but then when his crew alerted him that Akainu was coming to the island, he ran away. He didn't want that smoke against Akainu. Despite having both the Gura Gura no Mi and the Yami Yami no Mi, he still didn't feel he was ready to take on Akainu. Now compare that to Rox. Rox in chapter 1155 practically killed an admiral, which never happened before in the history of the Navy, and I don't think it happened ever since. Blackbeard back in the Marineford War just got the Gura Gura no Mi. He was ready to sink the whole island, but as soon as Shanks pops up, all that confidence he had when he killed Whitebeard, it all suddenly vanished. Shanks asked him there and then, does he want to have a fight? Again, Blackbeard says to Shanks, no, he's not ready. Even though he just stole Whitebeard's devil fruit and is on a power high with supreme confidence. Even against Whitebeard in the Marineford War, Blackbeard never attacked Whitebeard in a 1v1 situation. Him and his crew all ganged up on him when Whitebeard was already heavily damaged during the war. Blackbeard is a coward. He's a scumbag coward that will weasel his way into getting what he wants. Rox, on the other hand, in chapter 1155, infiltrated Pangaea Castle and went inside Imu's room and said to Imu's face that one day he will be back. He told the ruler of the world that he will be back. Now, is that a smart thing to do? I'm not too sure. But it definitely shows how brave and badass Rox is compared to his son. I can't ever picture Rox running away from Akainu, or Rox needing help to take on an already injured Whitebeard, or running away from Shanks after Shanks challenging him to a fight. However, what I will say is that the lack of bravery of Blackbeard, which is Rox's strength, Blackbeard makes up for with his brain and planning. Blackbeard is a planner, whereas Rox is kind of like the guy who just does things because he wants to. He wants to rule the world. There's no reason to it. He just wants to do it. I know Blackbeard has a similar type of goal, but Blackbeard, I feel, is more methodical in his madness when compared to Rox. Blackbeard originally wanted to hand over Luffy to the world government for him to become a warlord. but then he hits the jackpot by handing over Ace to the world government, which then allows him to become a warlord, which gives him special access to government facilities such as Impel Down, where he then released all the worst criminals of Impel Down and made the worst ones like Shiryu of the Rain join his crew. Even his fight against Whitebeard, he knows he will get pummeled by Whitebeard, so having his whole crew gang up on him was a smart move. Cowardly, yes, but it's a smart move. Him rejecting Shanks' challenge, again, smart move. He knew he wasn't ready for Shanks, so the smart thing to do is to not take the bait and just walk away and fight another day. Blackbeard is a very smart villain. He's always thinking on the next plan to get him closer to becoming Pirate King, whereas Rox will rock up to Emu's castle and tell Emu straight, I will be the ruler of the world. Another big difference for me is that I feel Rox genuinely cares about his friends, unlike Blackbeard. In chapter 1156, when Kaido suggested to Rox to use his power to crush and submit Harold, Rox loses it. He kicks Kaido in the face and warns him to never say that again, as Harold is his friend, which shows that Rox has loyalty to his friends, even more so than his own crewmates. It's a bit like Luffy when back in Whole Cake Island, when Big Mom's forces were after him and his crew, he was saying, how can he fight against those who have fed us? Luffy made friends with these people. That's why he was hesitant to fight back. There was loyalty there. That's why there was hesitation. And Rox showed Harold full loyalty here. That's why you see the devastation on Rox's face in chapter 1158 when him and Harold had that fight which ultimately ended their friendship. Rox in his eyes was trying to help Harold because he believed that the world government will screw over Harold and the giants of Elbaf in the long run. He was going out of his way to try and help and protect his friend. But Blackbeard never had that same loyalty. When he saw Thatch having the yummy yummy no mi, Teach didn't hesitate to kill him behind his back. He then betrayed his own division commander, which was Ace in Whitebeard's crew, and gave him to the world government for his own agenda and ambitions. Mind you, Blackbeard was on Whitebeard's crew for at least 20 to 25 years, and he still betrayed that crew. Whitebeard called him his son, and he still betrayed him. After the Marineford War, he then had another war with the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates in the Payback War. So he essentially took part in 2 wars against the crew that he was part of for over 20 years. The guy is a coward, a cheat, a snake, and isn't really the greatest fighter. Yes, he has the strongest Logia and the strongest Paramecia, but as a pure fighter, he's not exactly the strongest. However, despite all of this though, Blackbeard is still an amazing villain. It's because of all those things that makes him a good villain. He's this genius coward that happens to be one of the strongest guys in the seas. It makes us hate Blackbeard even more and makes us root for Luffy into finding the One Piece before Blackbeard. If Blackbeard actually ended up being the modern day version of Rox in terms of character, then I think a lot of us would actually root for Blackbeard more than Luffy. I don't know about you guys, but throughout the flashback so far, and as of this recording, we are in chapter 1158, Rox has completely overshadowed Roger. Rox has the charisma, the power, the caring side we see when he's with Harold, and just an overall badass character that shook the world government and told Emu to his face that he will be back. These few things that he has done has put him on GOAT status in terms of being a pirate in the story, and just as a character in general in this story. If Blackbeard was like Rox, then I think Blackbeard would have overshadowed Luffy, which you wouldn't want because you need the viewers to root for the main character. But anyway, that's my take on it. Let me know in the comments down below if you think Blackbeard is the new Rox. I genuinely want to know your reasons on why you think that is, and let me know on what other topics you want me to cover in the comments down below.